Thank you.
Two minor points of business, if you wouldn't mind. First of all, the Swedish Humor Association's International Humorous Writer Award, that is the formal title. You know, I've always found you a very funny writer and speaker, but I didn't realize the Swedes had confirmed it. Were you surprised?
Okay. Yes, I didn't know there was a Swedish Humor Award. And it turned out that my publishers went off to receive it. It was given at a ceremony in a football stadium in the rain. And the award itself was a large crystal bowl, which they carried off with them, and then somebody stole them. So I stole it. So actually don't have the Swedish Humor Award in my house.
That's quite funny in
itself. Somebody else has got it.
I thought maybe it was run by the Norwegians or something, making Swedish jokes.
Well, that occurred to me, but apparently I translate quite humorously into Swedish. Who knew? The Swedes sing very beautifully.
The Swedes do?
The Swedes do, yes. They've all learnt the same songs at school. And after a certain number of drinks, they will burst forth into singing. And they do it very well. And the songs are all quite lugubrious. I mean, you wouldn't know from them that there was a Swedish humor. They're all about little girls dying of TB.
Well, I can see that if anybody is going to win that award, you are going to win it. The other point of business I wanted to bring up, this $1 million prize. And I know it's co-awarded, and I know you give 10% to somebody else.
That's right.
But by my advanced calculations, that's still $450,000.
Not to be sneezed at.
Not to be sneezed at.
No, so, I do not sneeze at it.
Have you been a writer long enough that the fear of poverty is so ingrained in you that still feels like a couple of months of freedom, or are you sort of beyond that at this point?
I'm by no means beyond that, and I'm pathologically stingy.
So I can't really ask you for a loan.
Well, you could ask me for a loan. But you might not like the terms.
I have a feeling that is true. I want to talk about The Year of the Flood a little bit, and the 3 books you've been awarded for, and about some other books. I want to talk about your methodologies, and then I want to talk about some other stuff. That's a lot to talk about, and then we have a lot of questions, I think, probably. So I'll be very quick. The Year of the Flood covers the same stretch of time in the utterly degraded near future as Oryx and Crake, which you published in 2003 originally. But it's retold, completely retold, from the point of view of other, additional, very different characters, and is a very, very different book. That's kind of a nervy thing to do, to tell the same story again. So what made you go back to that story?
Rashness. Yes, it was a nervy thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's not completely different characters, because there is quite a bit of overlap, but it's not a prequel and it's not a sequel. It's a simultaneal, which means that it takes place at the same time as Oryx and Crake. And now I'm working on a 3rd one, which also takes place at the same time. So remember the Victorian novel?
Yes.
You remember?
I wasn't there, but I remember it, yeah.
Before Proust. Of course, he wasn't Victorian. There would be a chapter that would begin, meanwhile. Okay, so this is the meanwhile thing. You knew that when you were reading the meanwhile chapter, that what you were reading in that chapter was taking place at the same time as what you just read in the previous chapter. And that sooner or later, those 2 stories were going to meet up at the end. Sooner or later, Oliver Twist's evil brother, who meanwhile had been plotting all these bad things, sooner or later the stories were going to come together. And they always did. So it is with Oryx and Crake in Year of the Flood. They come together at the end. In fact, Year of the Flood ends probably about 8 hours after Oryx and Crake.
And about 50 feet from it as well.
And about 50 feet from it, yes. So it is that meanwhile chapter, or as Shakespeare used to say, in another part of the forest.
Oh.
So what made me do it? First of all, Oryx and Crake has a very open ending. You don't actually know what our hero is going to do. Is he going to make friends with the, as far as he's concerned, only other human beings on the planet, or is he going to kill them?
Right.
We don't actually know what he's going to do.
It was quite unsettling, I have to say. I wish you wouldn't do that at the end of the book.
I wanted you to decide what you would do.
Yes.
But I wanted you to decide. Have you decided that yet?
No, I'm afraid to decide.
So, about 5 minutes after I'd finished the book, and I ended it that way because I didn't know what he was going to do. I didn't actually know. So I felt that maybe I should revisit that and see what he actually did do.
You didn't know when you finished the book?
No.
Oh.
No, I didn't know.
I imagine you sitting there with vast outlines, but that's obviously not the case.
No, I don't sit down with vast, no, I only once tried having a vast outline, and it was a complete failure. I didn't finish the book at all.
Oh.
So vast outlines actually don't work for me. I didn't have them up on, some people write them on the wall, or have a whiteboard these days in which they put vast outlines and colored arrows. You know, when you're into the colored arrows, you're probably in trouble.
Really?
So I didn't have those. I had filing cards. And I was going to be very tidy, unlike my usual way of writing. And I was going to have a vast outline, and it was going to be 40 chapters. And it was going to be divided into 5 sections. And each of those 5 sections was going to have a chapter devoted to one of 8 characters. So there were going to be 8 characters in the novel, and each one of them was going to have 5 innings, and the whole thing was going to add up to 40 chapters. I started in on this plan, and I had each chapter on a filing card. I had little symbols on them, so one symbol for each character, so I could keep track of them.
A little symbol for each character.
Little symbols,
that is very
not only their names, but also a little symbol. This was before computers. Long before computers. I had just got an electric typewriter, and I thought that was paradise. Wow, this thing goes by itself, I thought. So I got twice through the grand scheme, which by a quick addition you will realize was 16 chapters. And I knew everything about these 8 people. I knew what they had for breakfast, what their wardrobes consisted of. I knew about their family backgrounds and what their apartments were like, or their houses, and I knew many things about them, but nothing had happened. And it was already 200 pages. They hadn't done anything. They had just got up, put on their clothes, their well-described clothes. So it was just too much to keep track of.
It was too boring to write after you'd done the outline.
In a word, yes. I did manage to salvage 1 sentence from it. That's all that survived.
Really?
Yes, it was about